Hello, guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Vijeta, and I will be continuing with the lecture series, the World Literature lecture series. And let us begin with the works of Marlowe. Last time we talked about his personal life, so now let us begin. The first and the most important play of Marlowe was Tamburlaine the Great. It was written in 1587, and it is a play in two parts, which is based on the life of the Central Asian Emperor Timur. You know, Timur Lane. In India, we already know him. And the play was entered into the Stationer's Register in 1590. Both parts were published together in a single black letter octavo in 1590 by the printer Richard Jones. Now we come to the plot of part 1. The play opens in Persepolis. The Persian Emperor Mycetes dispatches the troops to dispose of Tamburlaine, a Scythian shepherd and a nomadic bandit at that time. He had humble beginnings. In the next scene in Scythia, where Tamburlaine is wooing, capturing, and winning Xenocrate, the daughter of the Egyptian king, he confronts the Mycetes soldiers. First, he persuades the soldiers to be with him, to join him, but then later on, he joins hand with Khosrow to fight against them and promises him that after victory, Khosrow will get the Persian Empire. Khosrow was actually the brother of the emperor, but after defeating the Mycetes, Tamburlaine backstabs him in a way, and he breaks his promise and he takes the personal control of the Persian Empire. Now, Tamburlaine becomes a very powerful figure and he turns his attention to Bajazeth, emperor of the Turks. He defeats Bajazeth and keeps the defeated king in a cage and feeds him scraps from his table. And he releases Bajazeth only to use him as a footstool. Yes, that's quite humiliating for Bajazeth. Bajazeth later kills himself after listening that Tamburlaine has conquered Africa too. So, yeah. Tamburlaine names himself the Emperor of the African continent, and next he sets his eye on Damascus, the Egyptian Sultan, and his father in law. But Xenocrate here, she pleads with her husband to spare her father, and thus Tamburlaine makes him a tributary king. The play ends with the marriage of Tamburlaine and Xenocrate, who was made the Empress of Persia. This concludes part 1. In part 2, Tamburlaine grooms his son to be conquerors in his wake and continues to attack his neighboring kingdoms. His oldest son, however, Caliphus, whose name is Caliphus, he prefers to stay by his mother's side, not risking his death, and that incurs Tamburlaine's anger. His son is very meek and he does not want to risk his life, which is not what Tamburlaine wants in his son. Now, meanwhile, the son of Bajazeth, Callapine, he escapes from Tamburlaine's jail and he gathers a group of tributary kings to his side, planning to avenge his father's death. He wants to, defeat Tamburlaine. He orders the inhabitants of Babylon to be thrown into a nearby lake. He burns the Quran and he claims to be greater than God. And he bids his son to conquer the remainder of the earth when he dies. Thus ends Tamburlaine, this part 2nd. Now we come to the Jew of Malta. It was written between 1589 to 1590. The play here opens with a prologue narrated by Machiavelli, a caricature of the author Machiavelli. Machiavelli explains that he is presenting the tragedy of a Jew who has become rich by following Machiavelli's teachings. Barabbas, a Christian-hating merchant of Malta, receives in his country house a party of merchants who report the arrival of several vessels laden with wealth from the east. Simultaneously, 3 Jews arrive to announce a significant meeting at the Senate with Governor Furness. Now, the purpose of this meeting was to discuss the overdue payment demanded by the Turkish master of Malta. The Turkish seigneur had intentionally allowed the payment to lapse over several years, leaving the Maltese with a choice of either making the payment or surrendering. The Christian governor of the island sought to collect overdue tribute within a month. He issued a judicial ruling stating that the Jewish community must either surrender more than half of their estates or they should convert to Christianity. Except for Barabbas, the entire Jewish community accepts the governor's decree, leading to the confiscation of Barabbas's wealth as punishment. So the whole Jewish community is ready to give their wealth, to give the taxes, as you may say. But Barabbas is the one who is like, no, I will not part from my wealth. So consequently, the homes of the Jewish community were transformed into a Christian convent. Barabbas swears to take revenge on the governor. He is not willing to bear this injustice, so he vows that he will avenge himself. Barabbas, to avoid complete ruin, purposely does not report the part of his treasure hidden in the foundation of his house. He persuades his daughter Abigail to pretend that she has converted to Christianity so that she might enter the convent to recover the treasure. Because you see, Barabbas's house was converted into a convent like the other Jews. So he wants his daughter to go as a nun and get that fortune from the foundation of the house, and he can get it. Abigail does her work dutifully and throws the money bag out of the window to her waiting father. Martin de Bosco, Vice Admiral of Spain, sells one of his slaves to Barabbas. The slave is an Arabian named Ithamar. He asks his daughter Abigail to show favor to the invited two young men to his house. One is Don Lodovic, who is the governor's son, Farnes's son, and then the other is Don Matthias. I think there is a double T here, Matthias. Barabbas wants Abigail to be betrothed to Lodovic, the governor's son. Lodovic has already heard that Abigail is a very beautiful woman, and none other than Matthias has told him so. So he is kind of duped by Barabbas, thinking that Abigail will marry him. Abigail prefers him. At the end of the second act, however, these two young men, Lodovic and Matthias, they are in competition with each other. They want Abigail for themselves. They vow revenge on each other in order to woo Abigail. Barabbas sends a forged letter to Matthias through Ithamar, supposedly from Lodovic, challenging him for a duel. Yes, that is what happens. And duel, it's a duel. Duel used to happen a lot in the medieval times and even the Victorian ages. Although it was made illegal, but a lot of gentlemen used to challenge each other for duels, and this is how they solved their differences. In Act 3, Bellamera and her pimp Pilia Borza, both the prostitutes, plan to steal some of Barabbas's gold. Ithamar falls in love with Bellamera. Lodovic and Matthias, they kill each other in the duel. Now Farnes, the governor, and his wife, they come to know about this, and Farnes and Catherine, the parents of Lodovic, they vow to avenge their son and, destroy Barabbas. Now, Ithamar tells Abigail about her father's role in the young man's death. Abigail was enraged by her father's acts. She enters into the convent, this time in earnest, to become a nun with the help of a Dominican friar, Giacomo. Not Dominician, Dominican. Okay? Barabbas kills all the nuns of the convent by poisoning the rice, as he was enraged by the act of his daughter, not her daughter, his daughter. Now, Farnes meets the Turks and explains that he will not pay the required tribute. The Turks leave warning that Kalimat, their leader, will attack the island. Giacomo and another friar, Bernardin, they are in despair about the death of all the nuns. And Abigail, who is also close to death, tells the friars about her father's role in Matthias's and Lodovic's death. Barabbas and Ithamar were delighted at the nuns' deaths. He is confronted, although, by Giacomo and Bernardin, and he is informed that Abigail has told of his crimes to these friars. In order to distract the friars, Barabbas pretends to convert to Christianity. Giacomo and Bernardin fight to get the Jew in their own religious houses. Now, Barabbas tricks Bernardin to come to his home. Ithamar strangles Bernardin, and Barabbas frames Giacomo for the crime. Ithamar confesses his master's crime to Bellamera. Yeah, he does that. And she decides to report all this matter to the governor. Now, Barabbas is maddened by Ithamore's treachery. He disguises as a French lute player and he poisons all the three conspirators by using a poisoned flower. That is Bellamira, Borza, and Ithamore. He poisons all the three. In the final act, but Furness comes to know about Barabbas's crime. Barabbas fakes his own death and he escapes to find Calumet. Now, Malta is captured by the Turkish forces and Barabbas is made governor. Calumet prepares to leave. Fearing his own life, Barabbas tells Furness that he will free Malta from the Turkish rule and kill Calumet in exchange for a large amount of money. Furness agrees and Barabbas invites Calumet to a feast at his home. When Calumet arrives, Furness prevents Barabbas from killing him. Barabbas dies in a cauldron that he had prepared for killing Calumet. Furness tells Calumet that he will be a prisoner in Malta until the Ottoman Emperor agrees to free the island. So yeah, that's how the play ends. Furness is the winner in some ways. And this play actually had a major influence on Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. Sadly, both of these plays are quite anti-Semitic if you think about it. So, but what can we say? It was the medieval times. Now, important quote, I count religion but a childish toy and hold that there is no sin but ignorance, by Machiavelli. Yeah, I think I just repeated the slides. Now we come to Dr. Faustus, one of the most important plays and one of the most celebrated plays of Marlowe. And even there is a sculpture in the Salar Jung Museum of Hyderabad related to Dr. Faustus. It has actually inspired a lot of artwork and it was written in 1592. So Dr. Faustus is actually Dr. Johann Georg Faust, a German alchemist, astrologer and magician in real life, on whose life this play was based on. Full title of the play is The Tragical History of the Life and Death of Dr. Faustus. Its first performance was in 1592, but it was published in 1609 and it is written in 5 acts. So Dr. Faustus is a talented German scholar who was born to ordinary parents in Rhodes, Germany. In the prologue, the chorus introduces the story of Dr. Faustus. Dr. Faustus is compared to a Greek mythological character named Icarus in the prologue. Wagner is the servant of Dr. Faustus. Now, before he turns to magic, he used to study logic, medicine, law, and religion, which is also known as theology. He learned everything he could learn. However, all of these things left him unsatisfied. So now he turns to other arenas, which is magic and the black arts. A good and a bad angel arrive, representing Faustus's choice between Christian conscience and a path to damnation, respectively. While the former advises him to leave off the pursuit of magic, the latter, it's double DER, tempts him for this pursuit of the dark forces. From 2 fellow scholars, Valdez and Cornelius, Faustus learns the fundamentals of the black arts. Faustus summons Mephistopheles and asks him to appear in the shape of a Franciscan friar. Very important for NET exams. Faustus sells his soul in exchange for 24 years of power with Mephistopheles as a servant to his every whim. Faustus signs the deal writing with his own blood. The word homofuge, which means fly man, appears on his arm and Faustus is momentarily seized by some fear. The good angel tells him to repent, while the evil angel tells him to stick to his wicked ways. Lucifer, the ruler of hell, promises Dr. Faustus to show him hell. And this is how Faustus's descent begins. He is lured into the dark path. Now, Mephistopheles answers all the questions of Dr. Faustus except for one question, which is who made the world? because Mephistopheles says that the answer to this question is against their kingdom, because they could not acknowledge the creator, the creator God, the Almighty. So he doesn't answer this question. Faustus explores the heavens and the earth from a chariot drawn by dragons, and he is now flying to Rome, where the feast honoring St. Peter is about to be celebrated. At Rome, he makes himself invisible and he plays a series of tricks. He disrupts the Pope's banquet by stealing food and boxing Pope's ears. Yeah, he does a lot of things. After this, he travels through the courts of Europe with his fame spreading everywhere. He is called upon by the German Emperor Charles V, who asks Faustus to make him see Alexander the Great. Faustus impresses him by actually conjuring Alexander's image. Here, Faustus also humiliates a knight named Benvolio. Benvolio is also Romeo's cousin in Romeo and Juliet. So just remember that. When Benvolio and his friend try to avenge the humiliation, Faustus asks his devils to hunt them and transform them so that horns start growing on their heads. Now, Faustus then plays tricks on a horse courser. Faustus sells his own horse to him and he asks him not to take it to water. But when the horse courser, not cursor, it's courser, takes it to a water body to know what the truth is, it turns into a heap of straw. Faustus is then invited to the court of the Duke of Vanholt, where he performs various feats. There, Faustus meets all his earlier victims, but he sends them on their way. When the 24 years deal come close, Faustus asks Mephistopheles to call Helen of Troy, the famous beauty of the ancient world. An old man urges Faustus to repent, but he drives him away. On the final night before the expiration of the deal, Faustus is overcome by fear and remorse, and at midnight a host of devils appear and they carry his soul off to hell. And necromancy, the meaning of necromancy is the study of dead souls. A 20th century theatre director, Jerzy Grotowski, he produced Dr. Faustus for his theatre laboratory in Opel, Poland in 1963. However, he made some changes. The plot was reduced to a single scene in which Faustus is on his deathbed and he is arguing with his students. He also presented double Mephistopheles, replacing the good and the evil angels. There are some important quotes from Dr. Faustus. The reward of sin is death, that is hard, if we say that we have no sin. Was this the face that launched the 1,000 ships? Not the 1,000 ships, I think it's 1,000 ships. Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Come, Helen, come, make me immortal with a kiss. So yeah, these are the things that define Faustus, and these are the quotes. Just keep them in mind. Just don't. I think there is some problem with the Wi-Fi. Let me switch it. Otherwise, you won't be able to see all the images, the good images. Yeah. All the images that I have kind of procured for you guys. And it was fun also. So yeah. Anyways, now that we have done most of the plays of Marlowe, I think this is the time to stop here. And I hope you liked this lecture. And we will start again with more of his works. Till then, please like my video if you liked it. If you have any corrections or suggestions, comment box is open. And subscribe to my channel, and I will meet you all in the next video. Thank you.